Hey everybody, welcome to the Jimmy Dore Show. We have a special guest, Dorothy Gasquet. She's running for Congress in Washington's 3rd Congressional District, but she's got a pretty amazing story. She deployed to Iraq as the only woman among more than 350 men in her combat unit. Though at the time, women were not allowed to serve in combat. She found herself leading patrols, managing base security, and on her worst days, losing her brothers. In the spring of 2015, Dorothy began working to build the progressive movement in Clark County. Due to her efforts as the lead grassroots organizer of the Bernie campaign, Congressional District 3 voted 80.8% for Bernie Sanders. She went on to get elected as a national delegate to the convention. Please welcome Dorothy Gasquet. Hi, Dorothy.
Hi, how's it going?
Very good. Thanks for being on our show. And I always give the people a progressive tester. So I'd like to ask you, are you for $15 minimum wage?
Yes, but by the time we implement it, it probably needs to be higher.
Oh, look at that. Are you for Medicare for all?
Yes, absolutely.
How about free college tuition at state universities?
Yes.
And how do you feel about ending the foreign wars?
Well, that's one of my big issues, one of the reasons I'm running. We absolutely need to end these wars. They're not doing us any good.
So that's fantastic. So you're a veteran, and I love to hear veterans say things like that because even the most liberal members of our Congress voted for a bloated Pentagon budget they handed Donald Trump, $80 billion above last year's Pentagon budget. And that's enough money to send everybody to college for free in the country. We could have. So my point is, how do you think? First of all, what is your position on ending the wars?
We are not doing ourselves any service. We're making things worse. We're now engaged in something like 13 countries after 16 years, and it's costing us resources, it's costing us lives, and it's harming people who are innocent. And so we really have to figure out how we can create the peace that we need.
And so what was, I agree with you 100%. I mean, if we would take that money we're spending to kill people and spend it to try to help them, we'd have a lot less terrorists trying to kill us. And, so your service informed you. What did you come home from Iraq with?
Besides PTSD.
Oh, you have PTSD?
Yes. I came home with the realization that our country is just on the wrong track, that we are just really not doing right by the world. When I deployed, I left from Fort Irwin, California, where we were the trainers. We would take on the role of civilians and insurgents and really kind of try to create these realistic situations for the troops that we're deploying. And in doing so, we really got to kind of see things from their perspective. And then deploying and being a part of that and really seeing the United States from the outside, I didn't really walk away with the feeling that we were the good guys in that situation.
Yes. And then you come home and you see Bank of America and Goldman Sachs kicking out the veterans out of their houses, right?
Yes. Coming back and seeing people getting kicked out of their homes, coming back and seeing how many of our rights that people had just kind of given away, like the Patriot Act, and just, and we take an oath to defend the Constitution, and to come back and see that the real people attacking the Constitution are our own elected officials. It was heartbreaking. And I have waited for a long time for us to get to this point where we have this critical mass, that people are really engaged and they're awake and paying attention. And I think it brings hope, for me, at least.
So do you think there's a real chance we can reverse the surveillance state we live under right now? Because the Fourth Amendment is really just a joke right now. We don't really have a Fourth Amendment.
Mhm.
So do you think that there's a real chance that we can turn this back around? Because this was done by Democrats, remember?
Yes. Well, it's done by corporate representatives, regardless of party association, right? So
Right.
it's big money. It's big money building these data centers and collecting our data, and then they use it to also advertise to us and to track our personalities and figure out what we're doing. It's certainly frightening, but there is hope. There is hope that there's a lot of people who realize that this is because we need to fight for it. We need to fight for those rights back, and we need people to get engaged, to vote, to run for office, and to fight for these things that we need to fight for. It's We are the final check on government, right? Checks and balances. It's the people. We're the check on government. Every other institution has failed. Congress isn't checking. It's the executive branch. The executive branch isn't checking Congress. The Supreme Court isn't checking either. They're all working together. And then the media would be the fourth estate, and they failed. So it comes down to the people.
Yes, and the media is failing us horribly. I mean, always beat the drum for war. They did it in the Iraq War. They did it for Libya. They did it for Syria. And they're going to do it for Iran, I have a feeling. So I really hope someone like you can get in there and kind of stop this craziness. So, there is a program that was invented by NSA whistleblower Bill Binney called Thin Thread, which was inexpensive and would catch any attack that would come in. It was a good metadata analysis, which would have predicted and caught the 9/11 attacks, but they got rid of it for a much worse metadata collection program called Trailblazer, which didn't conceal people's identity. So Thin Thread did. This didn't, but the reason why they implemented Trailblazer was because somebody got billions and billions of dollars to do so. So now if you try to do this, get rid of our surveillance state, you're going to be going up against people who have billions of dollars of interest in keeping this in place. So are you ready for that kind of a fight? Because they're going to smear you. They're going to do everything they can to you.
Well, I've already been facing it. It's here locally. The establishment has realized that I have been organizing against them for 2 years. But someone has to. We have to take up this fight. We have to deal with the corrupting influence of big money in politics. That's the number one thing we have to take on, so that we can get back our constitutional rights and we can end income inequality and take care of people and have government function the way it's supposed to function.
And how do you plan to combat money in politics?
Well, first we have to build the progressive majority. I mean, that's step one, is we really have to get enough people in who are willing to stand up against the system, which starts with kind of building these grassroots campaigns and winning without all the money. And then, we need a constitutional amendment to ensure that we make it clear that when it comes to politics, we should be able to regulate money. And then we need to deal with the fact that lobbyists can bundle and contribute directly to people they're influencing, which creates that conflict of interest. So ethics reform and campaign finance reform.
Okay, ethics reform. Okay, Bill starts with the progressive majority. Hopefully we can get there. So now you're in Washington. Washington's a pretty progressive state, right?
Yes, the people are progressive,
but not the government.
The political establishment in general doesn't want to change. The only people I talk to who actually disagree when I say that money is the biggest issue we're facing, money in politics, are politicians and consultants, because they benefit from the system.
Correct. So you think that do you have a primary opponent?
It's an open primary. So I have currently 4 primary opponents.
Oh, okay. So we have the same thing in California. So then the 2 top vote getters will have a runoff in the general?
Yes.
Okay, and so how's the response been to your candidacy? Have you done any internal polling, or do you just have a feel of how it's going?
We just have a feel right now. I mean, I just took sort of we were the organizers for the Bernie campaign, and then we just shifted over to this campaign. Um, and so we've been kind of out and talking to voters for 2 years now. So we have a really good feel for the district. It's
Mm-hmm.
very anti-establishment, very independent-minded people,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of libertarian views. So they're pretty responsive to my campaign,
So if Bernie,
simply because I tend to
if Bernie,
share their ideas.
yeah, if Bernie won 80% of the vote, and it seems like a good progressive would be a shoo-in, are the other people you're running against, are they progressives or are they corporatists?
Um, there's two that are mostly progressive. I mean,
Oh, really?
yeah, well, one, he's not, I don't know. He hasn't really gained a lot of traction, so I don't know where he's going to go.
Okay.
And another one, he's self-funded, so he has a lot of money, and
Oh,
I think
okay.
that kind of makes it so he doesn't really have that connection to
Right.
what's going on the way that I do. I'm the only one running in this race who's actually, really worked like manual labor and those kinds of. So I have more of a connection with blue collar workers, coming from the military. And then there is one, the establishment pick, which she just jumped into the race.
Oh, really? So there's an establishment Democrat in the race. Okay.
Yes.
And so that's the one I'm going to guess the party's getting behind and not behind you, correct?
This, yes, the entire time we've been organizing this campaign, they've been desperately seeking someone else to jump into the race,
Mm.
refusing to even meet with our campaign, but saying they have talked with us. Um, and
Wow.
so they've just really been kind of organizing and trying to figure out who they could find to run in this race. They couldn't find anybody who was already elected, so there's not a single one of us except the incumbent, who has held political office before.
Okay.
But so she comes from the political establishment, though. She's been a professor teaching political science and advising on policy and things. So she has that connection to the political establishment.
Okay, so now you've talked about reforming the Democratic Party in Washington State. Could you elaborate, like what's been happening within the party and what reforms at the state level are needed?
So we've actually been really successful during the Bernie campaign and leading into our regular primary election in 2016 is when our local party people get elected. So we call them precinct committee officers here. And so they run in their precinct, and then they get to vote on who chairs the local party organizations, and then we vote on our state committee members who go on to represent us at state. So we've increased PCO participation by, I think, something like 75% statewide. And then we were able to take a clear majority of the state committee members. We replaced the chair. We still got some kinks to work out, a few setbacks here and there, but we're in it for the long haul. And I have a lot of faith in Washington State that we'll be able to get forward. I think the biggest thing we need is transparency. There's really no budget transparency at all.
Right.
In any of the organizations. There's not a clear.
That's a problem at the national level too with the
Yeah.
DNC, right? So, but transparency of the budget, and all the consultants are really controlling where the party spends the money. And so, do you think that let me ask you this: do you think the Democratic Party can be reformed on a national level?
I think that it has to be. I don't think we have any. It's just they have so much power. And the Republicans have so much power. I mean, this is the system, unfortunately, we have. It's just we have a system that tends to two parties. The kind of energy and momentum it would take to build a viable third party that would eventually take over one of the other two. It has to be happening right now. But in the meantime, we also need to be trying within the Democratic Party. But like, if you look at history, like with FDR, they did succeed in changing things and kind of kicking those corporate interests out of the party. And then we were able to make progressive reforms and pass progressive policies. It's possible. It just requires a lot of engagement, and people have to do work.
Okay, so let me ask you one more question. You were active for Bernie. You made that happen for him in Washington, 80%. Now, do you think that the Democrats will cheat Bernie again?
Yeah, I would love to say that they wouldn't. And the harder issue in this isn't just that they're cheating Bernie or that they cheated Bernie through that process, was that they cheated us.
Yeah,
Like, we were Bernie's campaign. And so all of those actions they took, they were against us. They were hostile towards us. And we actually had to face that hostility, and we still have to face that hostility every day, every time we walk into a meeting, and we're all going like, I don't want to go to this meeting. And not because we don't want to participate and that we don't want to influence what's happening. It's just because we don't want to go in and be bullied.
yeah. Now, have you gotten any endorsements like from Our Revolution or the Justice Democrats or anybody like that?
Yeah, so we've been endorsed by Justice Democrats, brand new Congress. We've also been endorsed by the Washington State Progressive Caucus and the Veterans and Military Family Caucus.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's great. What's up with Our Revolution? Why are they dragging their feet on you?
It's they changed their process, so we're working on getting endorsements by local affiliates. We haven't had an active one directly in our district. So we've kind of been trying to do some neighboring ones. It's just that they've changed their process. It takes a little longer, and a lot of these local organizations hadn't had a questionnaire ready. So they have to make their questionnaires, interview the candidates, vote on the endorsements, and then they pass those on to national, and then national makes their decision, which is good. It's good that they're doing a bottom up.
Yeah, yeah. Well, listen, is there anything else you wanted to let everybody know about your campaign?
Just that we're doing really great. We're building a really strong campaign. The establishment has been trying to call us non-viable
Ha.
because we're not raising a ton of money.
Hmm.
We're building our donor base. We're trying to get the grassroots support that we need to kind of get the money we need, and it takes a lot longer. But we have more than 1,500 donors already. We've got more than 120 identified volunteers, and it's building every day. So I just want people not to listen. So when the establishment says we're not viable, that's a lie. We're probably the strongest candidate to go against the Republican. And what's she going to do when she has to face a combat veteran and she's just being like, I love the veterans? That's pretty much all she does. So like, no, actually, you've been failing us.
All right.
So
Well, I look forward to that. I hope you have a debate. Are there any debates scheduled?
so after the primary, there's typically two debates that are done between the incumbent and the challenger. We're hoping to get some more forums and stuff just for the four Democrats in the race so that people can start to distinguish us.
Okay. All right. Well, great to talk with you, Dorothy. Thank you so much. Dorothy Gasquet, she's running for Congress in Washington's 3rd Congressional District. She's a real progressive and a combat veteran. We're going to put a link to her website right below as people go. If you want to help support, go ahead. Thanks for being our guest, Dorothy.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for continuing to make us laugh about all of this.
You're welcome. You're welcome. All right. Good luck.